Thank you everyone for coming to the museum on this Thursday. If you don't know me, my name is Daniel Atkinson. I'm the Education and Public Programs Manager here at the museum. Really excited to have Nathaniel here with us today. Nathaniel has shown extensively here in Houston, nationally and internationally. He's shown here at the Vondale Arts Center, he's shown at Project Row Houses, and now he's here at the Contemporary Arts Museum Houston in the exhibition Black in the Abstract Part 2, which was right over there. Very fantastic. He's also the recipient of numerous awards, including the Idea Fund Artist Grant in 2011, and the Houston Arts Alliance Established Individual Art Grant, which is like the longest name for a grant ever, but in 2011 he won that. So if you could all please, what? Oh yeah, Arcadia too. Numerous others. He's got a bunch. He's got a list. I ain't gonna name them all. If you could all join me though in welcoming Nathaniel here. Yes. Is this good? Can you hear me? All right. All right. Thanks, Daniel, for the introduction, and I want to thank everybody for coming out. I want to thank Cam, definitely want to thank Valerie for curating the most needed show, Jamal, Jeff, and Kenya for helping me install the piece that's here, and Quincy and security staff team, and everybody else in the camp. So this party started. So this is an informal talk, and what I want you guys to do is get your internal mental metronomes in place, and step back from the talk and view what the work is about and what I'm doing, because technically this talk is an abstraction. Okay? When you interact with people and encounter different experiences, conversations, and become an observer, participant in cultural documentary, it is interesting to witness the impact society has on people and culture, so to speak, or how environment shapes ideas. There's a cause and effect, and in my opinion, we are directly or indirectly connected. Ontological questions are raised that instigate my work, like what defines our humanity? How does one carry the impact of an experience? What will they do? Who will they tell? Who are they? Who are we? Who are you? Who am I? Questions like, when did this happen? Why did that happen? What if this never happened and this happened? What could happen? What's happened? Who's my audience as an artist? Should I be concerned with this particular viewer's opinion or not? How can I prevent this viewer from saying, I ain't got no time for that? These are the questions I'm asking along with experiences that happen externally and internally, which create pause. And one reason to create cultural documentation of that moment of art making are idea expressions. This perspective isn't new. It is a discussion about art and life and how it intersects, parallels, and collapses on itself. In some instances, I gain more sense of myself as I work because it's connected to other people's experiences other than my own. John Biggers, one of my many influences, made paintings, murals, drawings. He combined West African symbolism and mythology with the Black American social commentary and community concerns. He wanted to show the strength, spirituality, survival, genius, and humanity that's in the Black community, particularly the Third Ward, which was overlooked and an image was overhyped with negative, unbalanced representation. I always speak about him as a major influence, but there are many others and other art movements and tendencies. I found my work fitting in a few of these categories, but as a result, they are a part of a few art ideologies and movements, yet I have no allegiance to any of those movements. For example, Rauschenberg, Art Barrera, Stalin, post-minimalism, So the wet. Social realism. 1920s and the Harlem Renaissance. Jacob Lawrence. Movement Amari Baraka started, Black Arts Movement. More contemporary, Kerry James Marshall. Conceptual artists like Felix Gonzalez Torres, David Hammonds. Also, West African art making and my romantic presumptions of what it is and viewed across the Atlantic as a collective community connectivity, creating functional art relics, ritual and spirituality that is holistic. But you can't forget about graffiti, Donnie. Future of 2000. See, I'm also interested in the similarities that thread together Black American traditions with West African traditions, like music, for example. Informally, the power of the silhouette and navigation of the Black body, as if it was rhythm. Like, ideal differential audio but the sky electrocuting the twilight's eyesights that see into tomorrow, but mind you, this remain mental. I give them audio adjustments with the regular assortments of irrational abnormal poems, informal forms, formulating lipo, suction, mic flow, reductions of unnecessary saturated fat, hypothetically speaking, assuming you all that, why is this all you have? Is this a typo? Graphic or ever cited by a psychoanalyst who smokes microphones, not cannabis like nitro, glycerin, blow up like human cancerous growth tumors. Insurance is essential. Credit my street credential flow, vocabulary hold, lyrical instrumental, mental introduction. There's no need for no discussion. I hit like percussion, busting, rushing like Limbaugh, but far from a right-wing thinking. My name ain't Abe Lincoln. I'm here to prevention mentality from slave thinking, behavioral patterns. I'm deep. But out of the caves and caverns, my name ain't Plato. I'm dope. Okay, if you say so. My rap flow is original and unnatural. These works are inspired by the conversation I overheard and historically charged. I basically heard a young lady describing her daughter's appearance. Excuse me. She spoke about how her daughter had pretty light skin. I'm like, okay. Then the guy was like, speaking to her, he was dark as I was, and spoke about how he had that good hair, meaning not kinky, black folks hair, quote unquote. This thinking is like not progressive. But I understand its history and where it comes from. For some, beauty comes in an idealized image of West European standards. So, a psychological couple, Kenneth and Mamie Clark, did a research experiment in the 1940s with some Black children that was instrumental in the Board versus Brown case. They basically presented two dolls in front of each kid individually, one doll white, other black, and asked them which one did they consider pretty and smart. The kids overwhelmingly chose the white dolls. The point was to show that segregated schools were unequal. This became a larger conversation about color and image, so I combined those two ideas as a departure point. Personal experiences and observations of preteens and teens navigating through life is the reason I did these particular works figuratively. For me, the material of the paper bag was ideal for these drawings, because the bags are loaded with meaning like beauty, psychological burdens, embarrassment, colorism, which is racism or inter-racism based on one's skin's complexion. This classroom was an installation set up with participants who would answer questions regarding history, cultural colorism, race, and current events, and fill in circles printed on paper bags that looked like multiple questions dance drawings. Balled them up and placed them on an altar as a cathartic gesture. I made reference and give a nod to an artist's work, but I'm not into minimizing the art history of movements that came before me. This is something like what reminds me of the lineage of Black music. There's something new, but it always has something from the past sprinkled in it. I may speak of visual art influences, references, but Black music plays a significant role in my art making and ideas. Some of the musical influences are Parliament Funkadelic, De La Soul from the Soul, John Coltrane, KRS-One, and many more. Conversations I'm always having about art are how can people who are not familiar with the museums and galleries share this experience? Why do folks not frequent these art spaces? One is that some of the work is not speaking to them. Two, art education programs and classes are being removed from schools or minimized, which we all know. So what I'm interested in doing is kind of being in the middle ground in some instances with some of my work, trying to resolve how can one's culture be maintained when it's presented in a museum or gallery setting and at the same time experienced by folks outside of it. I consider my practice a holistic one, a multidisciplinary one that embodies many methods. I can use that interest me. There's no separation for me. For example, in some West African cultures, art is not separated from dance, music, art. It is all one. It is life. I think, again, the idea, process, methods, and materials are what I'm interested in. The audience of the environment, our environment is necessary to complete this work if it is to be considered a dialogue or communication of any type. Some of the work requires participation for it to be successful. So, for example, this piece, during the Project Row Houses, The Greatest Store That Never Sold. This installation was set up as a store to symbolize the conscious and subconscious relationships in community institutions relationships. I would ask people to donate books in exchange for some small sculptures I made. The books were then donated to Row House and Ryan Middle School, who really needed those books. And if you didn't know, that school's closed now. But my hopes were to create conversation about what was missing in terms of education materials, community, action, and selfless exchange. I thought about what if those who donate those books and the kids who read those books could shift the future through that experience, as a result, change the relationship between institutions and the community, transvaluation. Amari Baraka speaks about connections with culture and music and blues people. He says, the most apparent survivors of African music and Afro-American music are its rhythms, not only the seeming emphasis in the African music of rhythmic rather than melodic or harmonic qualities, but also the use of polyphonic and contrapuntal rhythmic. So, let's see. clap your hands if you want to. Okay, so I was thinking about the idea of sound and no sound. Sound as a protest, no sound as acceptance or approval. That's the sound of the police. What I was also thought about was how silence becomes an overflow of noise, and lots of consistent noise can become silent. That's the sound of the bees. I disagree that art and politics is a 90s relic way of thinking and art making when you continue to have the past overlap the now in real time. That's the sound of the police. The civil rights movement becomes a slice of the gender rights and marriage conversation, yet racism is still prevalent and holding strong. That's the sound of the bass. The Vietnam War becomes the Iraq War, combined with other wars. International abject poverty. Food corruption is motivated by corporate greed. That's the sound. Construction, economic imperialism. Some would say a prejudiced judicial system that don't stop and won't stop to stop and frisk. Racism, classism. That's the sound. Situations like Trayvon Martin, Oscar Robertson. That's the sound. I think there will always be space for work that is political. That's the sound of the police. That's the sound of the beast. So what about silence? Different perspective. Abstraction transformed to further abstraction, pain. This piece is called When I Hear You, Will You Come, well, I'm sorry, When I Hear You in the Morning. It's about Emmett Till, and it's an installation with audio, and it's an empathetic, symbiotic gesture and commentary on the justice and injustice system and how anyone can become an accused or the accuser at some point. Delaney, Trayvon Hampton, campus tourists, killing, on-site Miller, Terry Mike Militia, cruising blues might come to get you in the middle of the night. Wanna be nights with nightsticks, turning off your lights, switch, with honor your honor without the warrant, won't warn you this, army with their armor badges shining, totally state of mind and state your name, circulate your body frame and chalk, dying a line in a lineup like pop stars climbing to the top. But ain't no music playing here, you get tased and grave here, they enslaved and invade here, we raise and engage with fear, so what you hear ring is melodic sirens and percussion gunshots. I'm here to target, I'm running Cliff Youngin through the landscapes, my lungs in hell. Hell, oxygen diminish, finish time, finish before the finish line. What when Hunger Games or why? It's dinner time. See the hunger pains can't wait to serve it like play on the plate, escape or mode is denied. Identify those women dangerous in their palms, they anger is their psyche supply. Follow hollow points, interval criminals who don't look like me. It's highly unlikely this cop get convicted. It's not cause the witness is cold selling benefits like Monsanto can't grow cause it ain't no love. It's definitely killing fields. I hear your champ, they coming, but if you don't take a stand, you might as well keep running. Running like a track star, running like the blacks were by a self-proclaimed master who wouldn't procrastinate to castrate. My name is Nate, but you can call me Nathan, or you can call me Nathani to the EL. That's how we repel ghosts, so don't stand close. I throw 3 fingers in the air for my third world traitors, a middle finger in the air for racists and the haters. This piece was called Mike Clubhouse, and it's a commentary on the housing market and homeless and displacement. At the time, we had a hurricane and Hurricane Ike, so I gathered up all of these boards from that hurricane from different homes and created this house to talk about how, if depending on your financial situation, you are able to live in a particular place, but at that time, some people with high financial bases it didn't save them, so they were out to it. I mean, just think about a clubhouse that you couldn't even live in a clubhouse. What does that mean? Put an ad in the Art Lives magazine. Nobody bought it. So, neighborhood friendly. Hey, what's up, Shawty? Excuse me? My name ain't Shorty, my name is Violet. You know, like the color purple? I'm sorry about that. I was just saying hello. But, you're right, my bad. Hello, Violet. I mean, no disrespect. That's okay. I didn't want to have to pull this knife on you until you do right by me. Everything you do is gonna fail. That's a booty quote. Hey, wait, was that a quote from Spike Lee? No. And no. Every weekend I notice garage sale signs directing people to spaces that house reusable things of value. So I thought about that and thought about directing attention to things that were considered trash or something that was random, the everyday outside. It's a gesture of reclamation to denote its historical relevance. It's also a reminder of how important the history of a neighborhood is, despite the progressive or the deterioration that occurs in its challenges, like gentrification or removal of education institutions. I did a show called Zzz, like sleeping. This piece was inspired by Carl Jung, collective consciousness theory and practice as a departure point, and also critiquing the art community. Going in and out of reality, seeking new ground was what I was thinking about. I mean, within dreams and the subconscious as I understand that's possible in physical space, or we call the real world. I was interested in Black imagination and its limitations, if any, and I wanted to question how could you access the future multiverse or other spaces. One way I thought about were dreams, and I asked 4 participants who were artists and 2 were collectors to spend the night at the Art League and just dream. I was interested in erasing any types of identity or labels within that space and time. I wanted them to sleep together and eat together, but not sleep together. When they woke up, a professional psychologist interviewed them regarding their dreams. She used flashcards, images, etc. during the week. It was set up as a 1-week residency. Shout out to Stacks. I see you, Pruitt. Autumn. It was also about critiquing the art community, collectors, and institutions. It was also a self-critique on all of the above, including us as artists.
Liftoff of the Space Shuttle Discovery returning to the space station, paving the way for future missions beyond. Discovered already 3.5 miles in altitude, 1.5 miles downwind, traveling over 750 miles an hour. Everything looking good on the road. 57 seconds into the flight. Rub off.
That's this show. Had me thinking about space and time, and when I think about the paper bag figuration drawings you saw earlier in the heads that had plastic, I thought about expanding that literally and figuratively. Thought about thinking, transforming a subconscious space into one that materializes in some way. I was also interested in using material in a painterly way. I've done this before with paintings like No White Tees, Operation Sunshine, and crossword puzzle paintings made of only plastic, which had answers and questions that were in the form of short, free verse poems. Down Black is Determination, groups of young black kids, King Kong excel when given the chance. Cross on the court, Americans improvise. But this was different. This was, these paintings were more aggression combined with more melted plastic. I was thinking about layers as relative dating processes from a geological perspective, and that layers were a metaphor for measuring time, but connecting all of the negative space as a way to free oneself from a physical realm. In other words, not limiting the work to only the physical, but stepping into the metaphysical. Racialized mountain and unidentified volcanoes was inspired by Langston Hughes' manifesto, The Negro Artist and the Racial Mountain. It discusses a couple of things. One, a black artist who creates work that represents their black culture, as opposed to two, creating work to appease white folks' fantasies and entertainment for the sake of only entertaining them. This subject circles back to Du Bois' conversation on double consciousness, where black people must navigate two lifestyles, one for the familiar, one for the unfamiliar, and Alan Locke's pragmatist views on art and culture, which was to transcend racial ways of art making and just make art. This is the conundrum that is still prevalent today in some groups when you think about the art market as opposed to the art community. If this looks familiar, I hope it does. This is one of the pieces in this show. So, called absence. Aware of the most important transitional demands through lifespans once from the womb, a female voice who knew more than my eyes could, visual, lies, critical, vocally expressing expressive tones. Microphones were previously testing, but been known by an absentee daddy who had high testosterone level, devilish activities, made mom cry tears, flooding reservoirs when she died. My memoirs read misery. Between blank spaces were bad memories. Aside from cherishing good ones, but could one be on the straight and narrow with no pressure from peers? Remembering my first flu shots, high school pops, skipping class, getting female ass sex. First love, worst of them all, coming back home drunk, crunk to a point of no return, now with moral ethics. Mom love showed non-negligence. She's gone now, but will always be heaven sent. Taught me to represent. Look more in her hands. It's evident. I was thinking about life and death and thought about the plastic carrying things like food and dead things like deceased people in body bags, yellow caution tape, etc. Transitions. For some people, it represented death when you think about plastic in the sea and sea life. This is something Pruitt and I talked about, which made me think about this more. However, it represented something closer to home. It represented the death of my mom, who died from cancer when I was 18. I thought about presence of something that can become mundane or unappreciated, but by removing its place, they focus on what's removed, transforming it into something of value. So I think about all of the people who become used to something until it's removed. That old saying, you don't know what you're missing until it's gone. We always talked about the violence of black bodies when it comes to relationships with medical institutions historically, and how the black body was treated. For example, Henrietta Lacks and the Tuskegee experiment. It is definitely a conversation about race, health, ethics. Creating these works is quite physical, and I think about Pollock drip paintings and the physicality and dance-like movements made to create those works. Also think about when Basquiat would draw a line to his works to draw more attention to it. Repeat. If you haven't seen this piece, then I'm highly upset. Please leave the room. Actually, it's on the other side, but what's interesting is that it is very subtle, so you can really miss it. So it's, I guess people who really aren't really into art are really just, anal. You probably see this. Hairline Fracture is the title. And formerly, I was thinking about graffiti tags and silhouette wall drawings. But this work wasn't about working with architecture, but breaking down the architecture. Architecture as a metaphor for institutions that are limiting, restrictive, oppressive, or selective, breaking through walls and glass ceilings. I collected hair from a few local historic black neighborhood barbers and people who lived in these neighborhoods. So I consider this a collaborative piece, participatory piece of sorts from these communities, so much as to think about people collectively using aggression as a way towards progression. On the other hand, I also want to look at the other side of it, where aggression is used to abuse. For example, racism, redlining, and classism. The act of cutting hair is also an act of aggression, but can also be seen as a process for new growth, new ideas, new forms, and challenges to address and resolve. But it all starts slowly in a small way. These seemingly semi-autobiographical or semi-biographical experiences that is part of my work, which incorporates naturalist observation and humanist approaches, addressing psychosocial and political subjects, emotional impact, reflection, perception, otherness, space, time, and imaginative space is what I'm interested in. When I think about my work, I realize so far that my work remains in this state of questions, challenges, perpetual flow, and perceptual flux.
The beat, rock 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 the beat. Rock the beat, rock the beat, rock the beat, rock rock the beat, then rock the beat, rock the beat, then rock the beat, rock the beat. And you don't stop.